I'm Mohini Kent Noon. I'm an author, filmmaker, journalist, and charity worker. So please watch me with on El Virago show with Rashmi on Global TV and Good People TV. Thank you.
Hello all, my name is Rashmi and you're most welcome in my show, which is El Virago Show with Rashmi. In my show, you visit inspiring celebrities from across the globe. You can watch this show only on Global TV and Good People TV at 8 p.m. India time and 3:30 p.m. UK time, which is telecast in London, New York and Asia. So, watch me there with the inspiring celebrities.
Maraming negosyo na ang nagsara at bawal mag-operate ngayong pandemic. Naghahanap ka ba ng business na patok para sa lahat? My Store Nueva Ecija ang sagot dyan. Ang makabagong business delivery system model na ang mga merchants, riders, consumers at kooperatiba ang tunay na makikinabang. Swak sa mga online sellers, restaurant owners at kahit sino na gusto i-showcase ang kanilang local products and homemade special delicacies with free delivery service. Walang percentage cut sa registration and up to 10 products ang pwede mong i-display ng libre. Pati commercial ads and store layout design, libre. Tutulungan ka talaga ni My Store Nueva Ecija. At kung gusto mo naman ng delivery career, dito ka na dahil may magandang rates at siguradong makakaipon ka. At ang sasakyan mo, maaari mo nang maging kaakibat sa online negosyo mo. Matulungan at masuportahan din ang mga kooperatiba at masisiguradong walang masasayang sa kanilang mga paninda. Ang mobile palengke para sa iyong convenient na pamimili ng mga essentials. Dito walang hassle at pagod dahil pwede kang makapamili kahit nasa bahay lang. Makasisiguro ka pang laging sariwa at bago ang mga pagkain. Stores unified, shopping simplified. Download the app now.
Welcome to with Rashmi. My name is Rashmi and I am the director of El Virago. I live in Scotland, UK. El Virago Limited is a UK-based independent organization that focuses on fashion, awards, events, and working with charitable organizations. We believe in creating unique moments that leave a lasting impression. Our vision and mission is to bring together real talents and empowered people with diverse backgrounds across the globe that have something to say about who they are and where their passions lie. Through El Virago Show, we provide them with a wonderful platform to explore and share their skills and accomplishments with us. El Virago believes to ignite, excite, and unite with us. So, be ready to explore yourselves. Today, we have a very wonderful guest who is an author. She's a filmmaker, a journalist, and a charity worker. Yes, you can see behind, she's Lady Mohini Kent Noon, the author of very famous book, which is Black Taj, a novel, Nagarjuna, the Second Buddha, and also a cookbook. She wrote and directed the Ramayana feature film, Curry Tiffin, working with Sir Ben Kingsley and many TV commercials. Her plays include Rumi, Unveil the Sun, co-written with her mother. She has also been a journalist with several news magazines and BBC Radio 5. She gives public talks on women, food, children, and charity. She promotes spiritual teachings and women's causes. She is the founder chairperson of Lily Against Human Trafficking and lives in London. What an amazing transformation we have from Lady Mohini Kent Noon. So let's welcome Ma'am Lady Mohini Kent Noon. Most welcome to our show, Mohini ji.
Thank you very much for inviting me here today and inviting me to share some of the, what should I say, insights and lessons I have learned in a long life. and which has been full of difficulties and heartache, but good things also. So it's the usual mix. And, most of us wake up in the morning and look forward to a trouble-free day. But that's not how my life has been. And then I learned to embrace that because I've always been adventurous, whether it's adventurous in places and adventurous in exploring my own mind. And that's all. Being adventurous is all very well if the adventures are pleasant. But when, horrible things start happening, then you think, gosh, is this worth it? But it is eventually, because I think all those difficulties teach you to be more than yourself, to exceed yourself, and builds character. And eventually, it's fulfilling. So, I came to London as a student, and there was nothing in my Indian childhood that prepared me for life, because my father was very decent, very fun-loving. My mother was very regal, and her mother was Kavarani Madanjit Singh of Kapurthala, which is a Sikh kingdom. Now, in Punjab, in those days, there were 5 kingdoms, and the largest was Patiala, and the second largest was Kapurthala. So I was born in Amritsar, which is really the best place you can be born if you're a Sikh. But today I say that I am a Sikh, I am a Hindu, I am a Buddhist, I am a Sufi, and I'm a little bit of a Christian also, because I spent my entire life in Catholic schools and convent schools. So then I came to London as a student, and I was full of bravado, as I think young people are. And there's a song, you may not remember it, an old song which says, when we were young and sure to have our way, because that's what people think. And but London and student life was a shock to me, because I enrolled in art college and I went on to study filmmaking. But you see, now I was living in a world of landladies and rent and gas bills and transport and not having enough money ever. And it taught me about hunger. Because I remember one Christmas, my friend and I, my girlfriend, we were both in art school. We were just stuck without any money. The Christmas post had stopped. And so we just spent, I think, about 3 weeks living on bread and milk, which the milkman let us have on credit. And it also taught me the value of earning a living. So, and of course, like my mother, I have always been in the world of arts. And people say we become like our mothers. And it is maybe true, because my mother was a scholar, she was a poet. She was an author and she was a singer. And she worked in 3 languages, which she was all equally good at, which was English, Punjabi, and Urdu. So she wrote books in all 3 languages. She wrote about 50 plays. She sang on stage and she made recordings. And she wrote Urdu poetry also. And some of her plays traveled to London. And she and I collaborated on a play on Mevlana Rumi. He is a great Sufi mystic. And today, Rumi's poetry, which is very deeply spiritual poetry, is probably the most widely read in America. So she died 2 years ago, sadly, but she will always live on in my heart. And she taught me by example to be intellectual and not to crave for baubles, She was not concerned. I mean, I see people who are craving for expensive possessions, handbags, diamonds, whatever. She never did. So I think I imbibed all that from her. And I've written 6 books. I've directed films, as you said, and did stage productions, including the one on the Ramayana, to which Prince Charles came. He was the chief guest, and I made a couple of films where I worked with Sir Ben Kingsley on them. So in so many ways, I'm like her, but in many ways, I'm very different, because we are 2 different people from 2 different women from different backgrounds. And she had a royal upbringing. I chose to explore my own life. I flew off to London when I was really very young. And I chose to make my own way in the world. And that put some steel into me. So we are all never exactly the same, no matter where we come from, because there is one's own choices and life experiences and all that. So,
We need to know,
and
so
the
we
world,
understand, sorry, so we understand that you are coming from a background where, you're widely read into Western and Indian literature and philosophy and the spiritual teachings of ancient and modern Indian sages. I should say you are compilation of East and West both.
yes, I am, because I think people are not restricted to one culture now, because there's a lot of personal freedom in the world. And I've just written a book. I've collaborated and written a book on spiritual teachings where we even talk about dharma. Like my grandmother, her name was Kavarani Madanjit Singh, and she occupied a world that disappeared a long time ago. Her dharma would be very different to mine because we are living in very different circumstances. The basics don't change, truth and integrity, but other things change. And, the life constraints the personal freedom, because she certainly didn't have any, because she lived in a very cloistered thing. She was royalty. Her husband had been to Sandhurst, the prince from Kapurthala. And then many decades later, I went to dinner at Sandhurst Military Academy. And the commandant invited me to go back and look at the records, because he had been there. Kamar Madanjit Singh had been there maybe in 1917, 1918. And interestingly enough, at the same time, Ian Fleming had been there, who was the creator of the James Bond films. So, they may have known each other. So, yes, of course, we are all a combination of many influences now.
And we can say that we can hear many more stories from you from the Hollywood then, because you're a filmmaker.
Yes, except that I've made documentaries and I have, as I said, collaborated with this. But my main thing is writing. And you mentioned my book, The Black Taj.
The Black Taj, yes.
Yeah, one of the biggest national traumas of India was the partition of 1947. And
I was about to touch base now about that. You are mainly, there's so much focus around that, about the partition and what is the feeling, what are the emotions of people, and how hard has it been during that time. So if you can, if we can hear from you, it will be just amazing.
Well, as I said, I'm a Sikh from a Punjabi family, and the Punjabis were really the worst hit, which they always were, the Sikhs, because they were on the border. And Punjab and Bengal were divided. Now, South India didn't experience it because they were geographically very far away. And the difficulty is that trauma just lived on. Like in this book, which is set in 1993, Simi's grandmother, old Mrs. Bhandari, she cannot forgive and forget what the partition did to her father. So, these are family memories. And also there was a lot of devastation because he lost everything. So this is a love story which is set against that sort of background, against, class and conflict in India. And background of the Taj Mahal. And then, to the horror of her grandmother, Simi falls in love with an unsuitable Muslim doctor. But, the history is really against them. So what will be their fate? So that's, you'll have to read the novel to find that out. But the partition of India it was carried in memory. In our family, a 14-year-old boy who witnessed it couldn't get over it, the butchery that he saw. And he had nightmares until the time he died at an old age. And the partition of India was a very dishonorable act in a history of treachery and, a lot of bloodshed in the British Empire. And the partition was based on ignorance and I think contempt for Hinduism and Islam, because really the imperial rulers did not understand it. Britain was Christian, Europe was Christian. The divisions were all sectarian. There were these faiths that they didn't understand and they looked down upon. And actually, the British were almost unique in dividing the lands that they had conquered and ruled. Because everywhere they left, they divided and created, sowed dragon seeds that are still yielding terrible results. And the partition of India was very callously done because it was announced in June. It happened in August, less than 3 months. There was no time for any exchange of populations or property. And even the boundaries were announced on the 2 days after 15th of August. So people who were moving around didn't even know where the boundary was. So about 1 million people died. And I think about 16 million population was, 16 million people were displaced from their homes. So, it's a big blot on history and left a lot of trouble, which is still reverberating. The violence is still there, the clashes, the conflicts and all that. So it's a very sad thing that happened.
We still see some seeds definitely which have been uprooted during those times. There is something in people's heart, though I haven't come across any such circumstances, but I do hear and I do empathize with all those people who have been going through so much during that time. I mean, we can't even imagine in my generation that this had happened, but history, whatever you're saying, we have been reading in books, and through books we realize that must be a very tough and challenging time for both the countries and people over
there's
there.
a lot of trauma, but that generation has more or less passed away. I mean, my mother was a young girl. She was still a student when the partition happened. So, it's as time goes on. But unfortunately, it's not just a historical event. The consequences are still with us. That's a problem.
I see that your grandfather was in London. Was it during the same time? I think your two grandfathers studied here in the Sandhurst Military Academy.
No, not two of them. One was at Sandhurst Military Academy, but the other one was a medical student. They didn't know each other because one of them was a medical student in Liverpool and Edinburgh. But the prince from Kapurthala was at Sandhurst Military Academy because that's what royal families do. And then they go back and become honorary colonels and things like that. So yes, strong links with UK.
So that's how you do up down between India and I mean, you travel frequently between both the countries, and I can see that you have been such an intense reader. There's a big library that we can see behind you, and a lot of inspiration from your mom that has come up into your books. You are a successful author. The beautiful way that you're describing. Can you please tell us more about your books? We would love to know about that.
Well, I follow my interests. I pursue my interests. I'm not very worldly in the sense I'm focused on one thing. So I came to London to be in a bigger world and explore options, to grow myself, to learn more, to gain more knowledge, to become really a citizen of the world. Now, and I've always done my bit, one of my books is this one, Nagarjuna, which is a book on Buddhism. And the Dalai Lama, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, has given me the foreword to it.
Wow.
So I'm the global envoy in the UK of the International Buddhist Confederation. In fact, after this, I have to record a message for them because it's the Buddha Purnima celebrations. And the Dalai Lama is a very inspirational figure because in 2015, when he came to UK for his, he was on a UK tour for his 80th birthday. So I was offered the opportunity to host a lunch for him, which I did. And here, he's a great spiritual statesman, and the way he is in itself a lesson, an example to all of us, because watched his people suffer so much. The suffering in Tibet, the suffering of his people who have been totally displaced. And yet he never curses the enemy. And he's got a great sense of humor. He laughs a lot. And he said some very amusing things when, at that lunch also, which I have recounted elsewhere, because, he was 2 years old when he was discovered. He was 5 when he was enthroned as the Dalai Lama. And then there was a very intense period of learning and teaching, and he had senior tutors and other tutors. And the problem was that, he said he was naughty and not that interested in his studies. So what do you do? How do you scold the Dalai Lama, even if he's 6 years old? So then they created, they are the yellow hats. So they created a whip with yellow silk. And he said they used to beat him with it. And he said it was a holy whip, but he said, I felt holy pain. So he's just very good, He's amazing. He's a great inspiration. So
they have some spiritual powers as well that, they have that to absorb into their body, and still they don't feel. I see there are some couple of articles coming up where some sages are in the Himalayas and they don't feel cold and they don't wear clothes. So is it all the willpower that the yoga and the meditation generates into them? You are
not willpower. It's also practice. It's a lifetime of sadhana. Sadhana are ascetic spiritual practices. So it's a lifetime of sadhana and training.
I see that you have masters on the spiritual path, and you also host spiritual teaching tours to promote harmony and unity. So if we can also know about the spiritual side of you, it would be great.
Well, I've been doing retreats for about 30 years, and sometimes for a fortnight, sometimes for a month. As I said that, I belong to all these faiths because we live in a different time in our world where it's possible to explore a lot more. People are more, gurus are more available, accessible, teachings are more accessible. So I have been following many different paths. As I said, I've done Sufi practices, but I'm born a Sikh. So my mother was a scholar of the Granth Sahib, so I learned that from her. I've studied Buddhism, Hinduism, and I practice lots of things because at the end of the day, really, and the pandemic, I think in a way, because people are locked down. When I was locked down, I thought to myself, now, what am I going to do? And I thought, well, this is my time of retreat because I've done retreats for, I don't know, month or so, but, I would never have done it for a year. It's very hard to plan to do that for a year, but the pandemic has created this solitude for all of us. So it's a question of how you take it, how you treat it, and what use you make of the time. Now, everybody, whether it's, I'm going to talk about this next in my message for the Buddhism, because the Buddha said it's all in you. The Buddha is in you. But until you look there and you search, you can't bring it out. And we are all much too busy with our external lives, and it leaves very little time, and life has got busier and busier and busier, and it's got speeded up more even with technology. If you consider that, 40, 50 years ago, my father or whoever would write a letter and post it, and it would take a certain amount of time to reach that and a certain amount of time to get a reply. Now you can end up with, dozens of emails every day, and they all expect a reply immediately. Sometimes that bounces you into a indiscreet reply because you feel you must reply. So the volume has increased tremendously. Travel has done that also. But at the end of the day, the pandemic has also taught us that the reality of death is that normally we don't like to look at it. And it happens, now and then in the family, in friends and all. Now it's a daily reality. When we are, even if it's not in the family, we are hearing on the news. So life is really very impermanent. And this is whether it's, Vedantic knowledge, whether it's Buddhist knowledge, because the Buddha was an Indian prince at the end of the day. This is what spirituality teaches us. What is your purpose in life? Because at the end of the day, if the purpose is all external, it's all going to be disappear, and death comes to all. So what are you going to take away from this life? So unless one is conscious of that, looks at it, tries to go in that direction, tries to exceed oneself, to realize oneself, realize the potential, then it's all, impermanent. The rest, it's going to go. So, and now the pandemic has shown us that death is only one breath away, which is the reality, but it's something people don't like to look at. So,
I mean, many people have lost their loved ones, and which was like unbelievable. From young to old, we have seen all the phases. Like it looks like it can be with anybody. So we are like, I mean, it's a different world which nobody has seen, and I think generations must not have seen in their times. And
the pandemic has happened after 100 years. So, I mean, as I said, that is very concentrated. It's focused our minds, because otherwise you hear somebody's mother died or someone's aunt. I mean, it's far and it's occasional. But now it's daily, whether even if it's not personal, but it's, you feel it. So what does life add up to? So one has to use the time to look for the truth. And really, as everyone says, go home to yourself, because we have no time for ourself. We are all living externally, which really is ephemeral. So it's a time maybe to seize the moment. We have to reinvent ourselves all the time anyway. So this is the time to, that doesn't mean that external life stops, because it doesn't. It carries on. So, apart from my books, I do the charity, because that's also being part of the world. And it's part of an expression of my compassion. I don't have children, but I've got hundreds of girls who really are relying on me and relying on you and relying on everybody else who's more fortunate than them to give some help. So one of my books is this one, which I've written for the charity.
Dear Mama, oh, I don't think that you don't have children. You have so many children. I mean, so many girls whom you're working with. I feel like one child is for every mom like us. You're feeling, oh my God, how do I grow up my child? And you are helping you not helping, I should say, but you are actually grooming them. You are educating these girls.
Helping to parent them. So, but this we have through these are all the various children and girls from our projects. But we have, these are actually, because these children are, this is really a women's issue, trafficking. I'm not saying boys are not being trafficked, they are, but the bulk of them are women and girls. And I do a lot of my work is for women. It's either through the charity or through just talking. Women there's nothing that a woman can't do. Unless, of course, you want to be a heavyweight boxer and go and fight Muhammad Ali and rumble in the jungle. That can't happen. But apart from that, do anything. And I think...
sorry for interrupting you. I see that you are the founder and chairperson of Lily charity organization, which is against the human trafficking. So is it the same organization that you're talking about here now?
Yeah, that's my charity. It's called Lily Against Human Trafficking. Lily, we are named after a girl, and she was 4 years old when she was sold for 5,000 rupees, which is about 50 pounds, to actually a pimp. And he brought her to Delhi and sold her for 1 lakh rupees, which is 1,000 pounds. So that's a good profit. And she was rescued sometime later, but, she'd already been assaulted and raped and everything. So she grew up in a shelter home that we supported. She was educated. And now she's about 25. And she says that her life ambition is to teach mothers to love their children, because it was her own mother who sold her. Her mother was a working prostitute, and she wanted the money. So when you look at the suffering of a girl like that, so it's that's one end of the spectrum. But even very privileged and educated women are sometimes very hampered by either their own mindset or their circumstances. They're living in golden cages maybe. But so women, they feel very unsure of themselves, and they feel they can't express the feeling. And in Indian society anyway, women traditionally put themselves second, because they look after everybody else first. So that creates a mindset. And I think women should claim their freedom now. But they have, there has to be a new model. And I spoke about this. I gave a talk at London's Nehru Center. It was chaired by Baroness Margaret J. And how we need to find a new way of being. It's not instead of being strident. And I think in a way the pandemic is calling for that, because we need a more compassionate living with the earth and with all the other species. So I did this book for my charity, and I asked there are letters in it from girls who are the beneficiaries. But I also asked eminent people to contribute letters. So they have written letters specially for this book, including the Dalai Lama. And he says that whatever he learned about compassion, he learned from his mother, Sharmila Tagore. She is ambassador of my charity, and I'm friendly with her. Sherry Blair. And another a very nice letter written by Sir Cliff Richard. And who else? Mr. Hinduja, Kiran Mazumdar Show. So quite a few people of the House of Lords, and some members of Bollywood, some other eminent people. And all the proceeds of this book, because I've self-financed it, it will go to the charity. So we've already given about £10,000 to a free school in Jaipur.
Available on Amazon. How do we get this book? If
there is somebody in London who's, because of the pandemic, we've got into a little bit of time lag. It's hard to follow things up. But there's someone in London who is putting it on Amazon. So I must check what's happened. So it's available. It can be.
I mean, we would love to, buy this book, and if the money goes to the charity, that will be contributed towards the social causes. And I know now that it is very, very genuine from you.
No, the money will go. We are registered in the UK, and the money will go to the charity. And then it'll go to, because we've got about 12, we've done about 12 projects, and we have touched the lives of about 300,000 people, including villages and communities. But these proceeds from the book I want to put it all towards education. Therefore, I've sent £10,000 to the free school in Jaipur, which is for the children of tribals. These are, Saperas and the Nat communities and all. Now, these are village entertainers. Nobody wants to see their entertainment anymore because they've got television. So these tribal children, so that's gone. So the next lot, there were 3 free schools that we've been helping to support. So, but let me know, because meanwhile, I've got someone in London who's taking orders while the whole Amazon thing is set up.
Work, Mohiniji, we are coming to know from you. But out of all of this, I'm really curious to know something more. That is like, you are being called as Lady Mohini Kent Noon. So what is this lady and knighthood all about, if you can? And your feelings around that.
No, my late husband was in the House of Lords, and I got the title. And I think it's just like the British system of recognition like the MB and awards or things like that. It creates it's a little acknowledgement of contribution to society. And that's about it.
In so simple words, you're so graciously expressing your thoughts around it. But we definitely, we know that what knighthood is all about and what lady title carries with her. And by knowing your, your thoughts and your work, it's like really commendable. And I'm very, very privileged and honored here sitting across. I should say that you are one of the queens or the princesses of India. Whom I'm talking to. No, so it's complete honor.
As I said, that my grandmother occupied a world that unfortunately disappeared very fast. And I remember many things from my childhood, and with some feeling of regret, because there was a certain graciousness in living and a certain dignity. Both my mother and grandmother had it. I never saw them behave badly. And I think a lot of that got lost, good manners, good breeding, just being gracious in life. And I think what I saw in both my mother and grandmother, because they already had the honors and they had the, what should I say, the platform. So within, because they had all that, my mother was never craving for anything, but they were very humble because both of them were deeply spiritual. So apart from the fact, they did not pull rank on anyone. And yet there was a lot of dignity. Nobody misbehaved with them either, because there was a kind of regal presence and dignity. But they did not pull rank. They were treated everybody as equal. My mother did. I saw that. So there was a certain grace and graciousness, which I think has been lost.
I still see it in you. However, I can see with dignity and with so humbleness, and you have been so generously talking about, I should say, about all your work. However, you are a very high-profile lady, so it's great to hear from you. I'm also a bit curious to know about movies that you have been making. Can you please talk about or let us know about that?
Well, I made a feature film on the Ramayana epic, and we are lucky in India that we have these great stories. Because I think a country that does not have these great epics and stories is impoverished. Because it sort of fires imagination. It also gives you culture. Both the Ramayana and the Mahabharata give culture. So when I did the Ramayana, I was in my 20s. I was very young. A lot of the dancers and all were older than me. So it was a little difficult to, have authority on them. But I had a megaphone and I used to tell them that, you're stepping out of line. So it was a stage production that Prince Charles came to see, and he loved it. I mean, this is an amazing thing because it was getting a little late, but he said, no, I enjoyed it so much. I want to meet everybody. He spent another half hour meeting all the participants. And it was made into a film, which Ben Kingsley helped me on. And Ben is also, he's half Indian, and he came to India after that. And I got quite friendly with him. And when he came to India, I took him around. I said, you must have seen. I said, you spend so much time filming here that, there's nothing new to you. He said, I never saw anything when I was making Gandhi. I used to be in the hotel or be on set. So I took him to Old Delhi and I took him to show him various sites and things like that. So it was a very colorful musical. And, very interesting because, again, what these epics give us, Ramayana and Mahabharata particularly, because they are living epics in India. And they give not only culture, but morals and standards of conduct. And what I find very interesting is that although the Ramayana is a love story, I mean, it's, Dashrath's love for his third wife, Kekai, or middle wife, Kekai, and her kind of arrogance and greed. And it's Ram's love for his father, and it's his Lakshman's love for Ram, and it's Sita's love for her husband, and Jatayu's love for everybody that he gets himself killed. So it's all very idealistic and, Maryada Purushottam and all that. But I think for our times, Mahabharata is more relevant epic in some ways, because what is extraordinary in the Mahabharata is that they're all looking for revenge all the time. Nobody forgives anyone anything. They look for revenge. In fact, the Samba Devi takes, dies and is reborn to take revenge on Bhishma Pitama. So it's more human. It's more, relates to human emotions, because not everybody is quite so idealistic and selfless as a Raman character. So I did that. Then I made a film on curry called Curry Tiffin, which is on the history of India, and it's through food. And that was very interesting because I did a lot of research and I wrote the script. There were interesting anecdotes, like, for example, our we've got a Panch Amrit, which is a holy kind of nectar you get in temples. And it's a combination of milk and products of the cow and ghee and all. And when the British Raj was in India, they liked this concept of mixing 5 things. So they actually, in their clubs, they taught the bearers to create punch. So, they mixed alcohols and made a drink punch. So there were lots of interesting anecdotes that I put in the film. And Raja Bhilendra Singh from Patiala, who was a great hobby cook, and he actually cooked a couple of dishes for me on screen, because Patiala had one of the biggest kitchens and the most appreciated cuisines. Patiala, Rampur, 1 or 2 places in Rajasthan, they were, great culinary centers. And the Maharaja Patiala, what he told me, he said they had something like 35 master chefs. Now, one master chef used to only cook one thing. So one master chef, for example, would have been an expert on potatoes. So that's what he made. And so there were whole centers of arts. And Rampur, for example, was the old Nawab, was a great patron of the arts. So there's a Rampur Gharana. He collected instruments of Tansen. All that was also lost to India. So the Curry Tiffin is a wander through the history of India through food. So it goes to Hindu food and the culture and the, everything else associated with Hinduism that is apparent in the food. For example, they give Pinda Dan to the dead. So that is food. And then the Anna Prasna is the first food that the baby has. So the whole culture can be also defined by food. Then the Mughal kitchens, because the Mughals were actually Mongols. So they didn't have much culture of their own. They would have liked to have Persian culture. And when they became emperors, they emulated Persia. But when they came to India, they just adopted what existed, especially in Delhi. I think they were the Kai's kitchens that were so famous. And from that, they developed the imperial Mughlai cuisine, which is now famous all over the world. I mean, in London also, especially when I was a student, a lot of the restaurants were run by Bangladeshi cooks. They all call themselves Taj Mahal or Mughal, something or the other.
It still exists. It still exists. We can see that.
Then the British, when they came to India, they looked down on the food, like they looked down on Hinduism, they looked down on everything, because how are you going to subdue a people if you start appreciating what they have? So you run them all down. So they kept their food very different in the clubs and all, very English, except, slowly, some of them, of course, went in for curries. Curry itself is not an Indian word. It's a mixture came from Keri, K-E-R-I. So everything got mixed up.
My God, I didn't know this about... I didn't know about curry.
No, curry was, actually an English word, because in Indian food, there's traditionally no such thing as curry. It's, it came, yeah, I mean, and Sunday lunch was known as Sunday tiffin. So my film is called Curry Tiffin because it's a combination of both. But the joke is, of course, it's an old joke that the English conquered India with gunpowder, and the Indians have conquered Britain with curry powder because of all the food.
I mean, it's so much. I didn't know. So all these. There's a lot of research, I believe, in what you're talking. It's because something we have read in books or some vague ideas, or we have listened from our grandma some stories. It's coming out from there. So whatever you're speaking now, it's like, oh, wow, this is something very different, and I would love to know. I'm very, very, anxious to know, like, you have so much knowledge and so many nurturing thoughts, and you're so reassuring in whatever you're conveying. So, how would you, impart it to the world? Because this is so beautiful. And what is the medium that you are, proliferating it?
I'm not sure I understand the question because I write books. I've written 6 books. I do charity work, which I've done for about 30 years. I mean, this Lily I've been doing anti-trafficking work for about 6 years. I mean, not 6, 15, 18 years. Before that, I was focusing on health and education because, it's in many different ways because I'm a one individual and there's only so much I can do. So through the charity, I mean, we are part of the human energy, and it's the ego which says, no, I'm so great, and I am rich, and I'm this, and I'm that. But actually, the lowest common denominator in the human race is also part of me. So these during the lockdown, you've seen people starving, and my charity has been distributing food since last March 2020. And we gave out food bags and even hot food and all over India through our projects. But those people are also part of us. So again, what I've learned many different things from every faith. But what the Dalai Lama, I've attended his talks and teachings for about 10 years in Delhi. He's not doing them anymore. But every time he emphasizes compassion. And I saw that through my mother and my grandmother, because as in the Sikh family, seva is very important, service. And you must have seen in the pandemic, the way the Sikhs came out all over the world to help people to give. And so we are all part of the same human energy, the same human race. And life is very finite. So what are you actually going to do with your time? That is a decision you have to take. And it's going to pass anyway. And
Mohiniji, I would like to know, all these studies that you do, and there's so much, knowledge in you. So what is the best mode that a next generation can, pursue the same thing, or they can imbibe this from some great writers like you?
The people I come into contact with, and obviously I'm not a world leader or a great spiritual guru that I contact thousands, but the people I come into contact with, and in my charity, I've got youth ambassadors. Because I always tell them, I said, listen, you can create a better world with vision and compassion. Better world than we have today. And because if you orient yourself now, and there is, even in Sikhism or in Hinduism also, nobody is saying you need to become an ascetic, because that's not advocated. You carry on with your life, but live with an awareness that the body and the possessions are not all. You are a soul, and you are part of the spirit. And what is given to you in your lifetime, how are you going to utilize it? You're going to be judged by that. And, these days, I mean, the most amazing things come through on WhatsApp because I tell people, I said, you don't need a guru anymore. Just read your WhatsApp messages.
Now it's a
One
WhatsApp
of them,
university.
someone sent me something, a long thing on karma. I don't remember. I just remember one thing from it. It says, karma never forgets an address. And that's true. Everything we do is recorded, even the smallest thing. And I have friends who are atheists and who are journalists, someone who are skeptical and who are this and that. And there's one very clever friend of mine, and I don't get into these discussions because it's just a mindset. What difference does it make to me? But I just say that just because you don't have personal knowledge of it, because you have not taken the time or the trouble to study or anything, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So you go to a villager and you tell him about emails. I mean, that poor man probably doesn't know anything about it. Doesn't mean emails don't exist because he doesn't know. I said the same to that, if you say, what is spirituality? What's the use of prayers? Is there a God? I said, that's your belief system, which is actually limiting you. It's really got nothing to do with me or anybody else. And God doesn't care, because it's a choice. So therefore, open your mind, be sympathetic to the sufferings that are going on, not only in the pandemic, otherwise. Nobody wants to suffer. Everyone wants to be happy. So, help if you can.
I'm so lost in your words. With the tremendous knowledge, and you've been really respectful. I think you're a source of happiness for us because the way you're explaining, I'm just deep diving into it. Very, very deeply supportive and magically talented, I believe. Mohini ji, we would love to hear from you, but we have a little bit of time constraints. And we can have you again definitely on our show. But now, as we might leave, so we would like to have your message for our viewers to let how does your life motivate my viewers?
Yeah, I think, Mahatma Gandhi said, I don't know, I think it was him. He said, my life is my message. So you have to live you have to live with your principles, with your integrity. There is no point in talking about empathy and compassion and then, being duplicitous and lying and cheating and grabbing and, going after money. By all means, do that if that's what you want. But there is, at the end of the day, I've, seen a lot and in London and met many people. Sometimes the hypocrisy is breathtaking and there's no point in it because at the end of the day, you are fooling yourself most of all. You're going to be very far away from your soul and your spirit, and it's just pointless. So live with truth, with integrity, and it doesn't matter what other people are doing.
Wow. Thank you so much, Lady Mohini Kent Noon ji. My dear viewers, so you today met not just a lady, but you did see a born princesses who is a queen of our age, I should say, from India. And she is highly, deeply supportive, very magically talented, very wise, mature, a filmmaker who is very knowledgeable, who has a deep research and study done, who's an author, and then she's presenting herself. She's becoming an example for all of us, very, very graciously for us as an inspiration that, you can do things and express it in a very, very simplicity, like she is herself looking very simple with simple pearl necklace, but she's a diamond. So,
let's not overdo it.
No, it's not over, but it's some amazing personality that I have you on my show, and my honor to have you. Thank you so much, Lady Mohini Kent Noon, for coming on Alvirago show with Rashmi. We will see you with another inspiring personality next week on this show, Virago Show with Rashmi. Till then, take care, stay blessed, keep yourself healthy.